Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Had a little trouble getting in there, but finally made it. So glad that you're here. Glad that I'm here, and excited that we get to go to the next level. I am still editing. I've added a few pieces to the Power Person worksheet, and so my apology that it has not been set up yet. We will be sending out an email with it in it, and all 10 radio shows that explain that new Power Person worksheet. There will be a couple of steps that are missing that I had put in as I was editing, and I've actually got another step or two in mind that I might add, but they'll be obvious ones. They'll be self-explanatory. But that 10 hours of radio shows will be in the newsletter the next time it goes out. It'll be within a day or two anyway. If you're not on our newsletter list, go to our website, whyagain.org. That is, of course, if you'd like to be. And down at the bottom of the page, you'll see newsletter. Put that in and give us permission to send it to you, and that's what we'll be doing. Beyond that, we be rocking along. All is moving forward, and I decided today that seeing as how we spent so much time elucidating the principles of the power person, I thought what I'd do is step into the codependence workshop. And the codependence workshop is the workshop that sets that up. And what I'll invite you to do as I'm speaking is if you'd like to get a copy of the codependence worksheet, if you just go to a search engine and type in whyagain.org space codependence worksheet, then that'll give you a copy of the worksheet we're going to work with. Otherwise, I'll explain it. It's an easy worksheet. There's not a lot of detail in it. So if you've just got a blank piece of paper, that will work. We're going to make a couple of lists. So get a pen and paper if you would. And again, if you'd like a copy of the worksheet, you can do that now or do it after the show. Then just go to Whyagain or type in a search bar, whyagain.org space codependence worksheet. That'll take you to a PDF of it that you can just download free from the site. So, and I'll before I get into the codependence work, I will be happy to, since we covered so much material. If anyone has a thought for us, hit the call button, and we'll see if we can get things working today. We've had a few challenges with it, but I know Ayende's been working on it, and so if you have a call for us, if you have a thought, if you have anything, any questions on that last 10 shows, so we've got at least 10 hours on the new, and it's now an 18-page codependence to interdependence worksheet. Then if you uh, have any thoughts, any questions, you can put them in the chat room, and or if you hit the call button. And if you're in the app, if you've gotten notification that the show is happening, then open the app. If you can click the link and you can listen, but you can't interact fully on the web page that it goes to when you click the link. You have to download the app and then find Mind Shifters Radio. Or if you want to be notified every day of our show when it happens, if you download Needle, Nedl, from your uh, app store and then register, select Mind Shifters Radio as a favorite, then every day when we start the show, you will get a copy of it. You will get, pardon me, a notification. And that notification will hopefully keep you on track. And each time you get a notification, open the app, listen from within the app. And that way you can fully interact. You can ask questions. You can I saw a comment came up, and that comment was from, oh, Jeannie put the link in to the worksheet. So in the comments, you'll find a link to the worksheet. And if you have a question for us, hit the call button. Let's talk about it. And if you don't, then I'm going to jump right in to the codependence to interdependence workshop itself. This is the workshop we have on DVD or CD and or streaming. And so we'll just jump right in on that since I don't see any hands up in the caller queue. And if you ever had any conflict in any of your relationships, then there's a good chance that you are in a codependent or have been in codependent relationship. And the main signal that one is in a codependent relationship is they use the language of blame. You made me mad, you made me sad, you upset me. And there's so much conflict here, and what I really want is a conflict-free relationship. That's what people say. But guess what? I've got some really good news for you, and I've got some really bad news for you. I'll give you the bad news first. You cannot have a conflict-free relationship unless you are a conflict-free being. You got to stop the codependence game of pretending that the upsets in your mind are caused by someone else. And by the way, if you're not willing to actually own it and do some work around it, playing this word game that, well, I know this is mine, but if you're not willing to be supported in healing what's going on, stop pretending that you're not blaming, because that's the essence of the blame game. No, I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to deal with it. So if you want to become a conflict-free being, the most profound way I know to do that is to engage in First Century Aramaic Forgiveness. And the easiest way I know to do that is simply download the world's only forgiveness app. If you go to your app store and you type in Heartland, all one word, Heartland, second word, Aramaic, Aramaic, Forgiveness. You'll see an app come up with a red heart in it. That's us. The most profound way I know to become a conflict-free being is to utilize the process of forgiveness outlined in that app, which is nothing but, certainly not something I created. It's something that I was fortunate enough to discover by engaging in the First Century Aramaic language of Yeshua. So that tool is there, and what it does is it puts an end to the codependence. Now, it puts an end to it if you actually use it. It's like everything else. It does not work if you do not use it. But if you consistently, persistently use the tool, what you'll find is that you have less and less conflict in your life. And, when you realize that reality is the output of the human mind, then if you or someone else has any painful realities in them, if you're going to be in the same space with them, sooner or later, you're going to step on each other's reality. That's the way it's going to be. They talk about this, there's an old saying, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, absence makes the heart grow fonder. No, absence does not make the heart grow fonder. That's a lie. Well, I had this person I had all this conflict with, and I went away for a month, and I came back, and it was so good to see them, but I wanted to see them, and I wanted to be with them so much. Yeah, and how long did it take before the stress was up and the chips were down, and you were back in the same old boat? It didn't make the heart grow fonder. What happened is a lack of resonance of one of the things that this person can step on in you, something you're in denial about, something that's painful for you. The absence of them means that the noise from that denied and dissociated internal pain gets quieter. And when it gets quieter, you go, oh, I yearn for that person. It isn't the absence, it's the fact that the noise of the projected pain that you put into your brain image of them gets quieter. So absence does not make the heart grow fonder in any way, shape, or form. It just allows the stuff to stay hidden more easily. And they say, the opposite, familiarity breeds contempt. No, familiarity does not breed contempt. But if you're in someone's space long enough, often enough, i.e. they call that familiarity, and they know how to step on your why is this happening to me again, and you know how to step on theirs, it'll seem like it's the familiarity, but it's not. It's stepping on each other's realities. the resonating of each other's realities. So ask yourself, have you ever had any conflict in any of your relationships? Is there anybody in your life around whom you do things that you normally don't do? You smoke, you drink, you become a klutz. Well, this is where we start off with the codependence principle, with the tool of codependence. And in stepping into the work of codependence, you free yourself of the drama and the trauma of codependence by becoming, pardon me, a conflict-free being. So if you have the worksheet downloaded, we're going to start with the first column. If you don't, take a blank piece of paper, draw a line down one side of the page, maybe a 2-inch margin down one side of the page. And now what I'm going to ask you to do is to make a list of everyone in your life who has ever offended you. Now, I realize that in some cases, there may not be enough paper in the world. But go ahead and make a list. Do your dirty dozen. A list of everyone who's ever offended. And then make a second column, again about 2 inches wide. And at the top of that list, title this list, The Nature of Their Offense. What did they do to you? Now, we don't need a big, long explanation. We don't need a paragraph, just a word or two. It might be they yelled at me, they disappointed me, whatever. What was the nature of their offense? And notice whether or not, as you make that list, you're breathing. And as you breathe, just offended you. The nature of their offense. And I see your smiling faces, Carrie. Yes, this is a fun worksheet. There's I don't know whether you've done it lately or if you remember, but there's a really fun turnaround at the end here on this worksheet. So you've got a list of, your dirty dozen of people who've offended you. And ultimately, what I suggest you do, seriously, we're not going to take the time for everybody to do it comprehensively, but literally go through every minute of your whole life and make a list of all the people that your mind says have offended you. I mean, right back to the earliest childhood memories that you've got. Make that list. And then write out the nature of their offense. And then there's the third list, another 2-inch space. What are your punishment thoughts? What is it you want to do to them? Actually, so there's room on the page. I should have told you to turn it sideways because it's doing the worksheet itself is done sideways on the page. So there are actually 5 columns. People who offended me, nature of their offense, my punishment thoughts. What is it that I wanted to do to them? And notice what's happening with your breath as you write, as you contemplate that. And again, it just has to be brief, a word or two. We're not looking for a big, long, comprehensive thing, especially on the show. I suggest you do take the time to do a full comprehensive list. But for our purposes now, just a word or two will do. And then the fourth column, what's your advice to them? Now, go to hell is not advice. That's punishment. To put that in the other column. But let's imagine that this person, you want with this column, you want to imagine that they are your most deeply cherished friend that has come to you for advice around this issue. What would you suggest to your most cherished friend? Let's say people who offended me, the first blank is Bill, the nature of his offense. He really raged and screamed at me. What's my punishment thought? I want to rage and scream back. Now, imagine Bill as your most cherished friend. In order to clean this issue up in his life, what would you suggest to him? And it might be, Bill, I'd suggest you do some work around that rage and free yourself of it because it's really damaging you on a tissue level. You want to work through that. So, what would your advice be, this person being your absolute most cherished friend? And then the fun part, the turnaround. By the way, we know that you're codependent if you copy somebody else's answers. If you're sitting with someone and they're doing a list, no fair cheating, no fair looking at theirs, and also not fair to put the same name in every blank. So if you look at your list and everybody that you put on it or thought about putting on it but didn't, you now have in that list a list of your codependent relationships. And you have a list of the people who, through blame, you've given away your power. At the moment of our creation, we are given the exact same amount of power as anyone in creation has ever been given. Those who live in blame give their power away by projecting it into their brain's image of someone else. You made me mad. You made me sad. You made me afraid. And so each time that you forgive as to one of your codependents, the power that you've given away to them that you seem to lack in their presence, you don't lack it at all. You've just bound it up in your brain's image of them. And that's why it's not available to you. And of course, what does the codependent see at their death? They see somebody else's life flash before their eyes. Now, before we move to the next step, let's imagine I'm in the classroom and I've got my 4x8 whiteboard I'm working with and markers. And I draw a propeller on the board. Now, if we were to bring, let's imagine we're in real life. We bring a man from the jungles somewhere that's never seen anything modern whatsoever, and we bring him to the tarmac at the airport where there's a prop plane and the propeller is spinning. Now, the person who has no idea what a propeller is or an airplane looks at that spinning prop. First time he's seen such a thing, first time his eyes have picked up on the energy of such a thing. What does he look at? What does he see? And he sees a shiny silver disc. So notice the man that doesn't know. Now, of course, if you know it's a prop, you go, well, it's, four arms spinning around pivot point. But if you don't know that and the plane is already started and the disc or the prop is spinning, it looks like a solid silver disc. Why? Because the mind presents its best guess of what's out there when information comes in through the eyes. But where does the shiny silver disc that this man sees come from? It comes from the firing of brain cells in response to energy delivered by his eyes through light to his brain. So the brain, or the function of the brain we would call the mind, is the source of the false picture that he sees. His perception of the propeller being a shiny silver disc. Why is that important? Why do we need to understand that? Because everything you have ever seen is a projection, a picture generated from brain cells. And it's painted literally on the inside of your eyeballs. And the feelings that come with it are coming from energies that are moving within your physiology. Now, look at your list of codependents. Look at the list of people who've offended you. My offering is that they're all shiny silver discs, every one of them. Every one of them is a picture of a body that you have hallucinated. You know, the fellow from the jungle standing on the tarmac looking at the spinning propeller hallucinates a shiny silver disc. Something that absolutely is not there. And his hallucination comes from the hologram he sees comes from the firing of brain cells within him. Same thing with all the names on the left side of your page. Same exact thing with that list. They are each hallucinations coming from the firing of brain cells. We do not live in a material world. We live in an energetic world. You cannot heal if you do not apply the truth. And until you understand and start to apply and see through the eyes of energy dynamics, there are all kinds of hallucinations men have made up over the eons. You can look, and there have been certain principles that have governed, this society, that society, that society, and that one, all different because they were all hallucinations. There are languages that are made up in the minds of men. They are words. Now, for our friend standing on the tarmac, he looks at that propeller, he sees a shiny silver disc, and it's really important for him to understand that what he's seeing is an hallucination if he's going to interact with that propeller, i.e., let's imagine our friend says, "Oh, that's a shiny silver disc." And I say, "No, no, no, it's not." He says, "Yes, it is. I can see it." And he says, "Well, let me see. I'm going to go up and put my fingers on it and find out." If he doesn't know the truth, he's in big trouble when he puts his finger on that propeller. If you don't know the truth and you interact with those hallucinations in your mind that are made up of your own painful content and you interact with them, you are going to shred relationships. You are going to shred the possible life that you could have. So each image that comes through the perceptual mind is a structure generated by that mind. We do not live in a material world. Let's listen to Max Planck. As a man who spent his entire life studying matter, I can tell you this much. There is no matter as such. Our entire world is made of succeedingly smaller patterns of vibratory fields, nested one within another. And beneath these fields, we must assume there is an intelligence or a mind. That's the guy who won the Nobel Prize in Physics. So if the shiny silver disk is a reflection of something going on within the mind of the gentleman standing on the tarmac. What if you applied that principle to your list of codependents? Where does the body, remember, we don't have a physical world. This is not a material world. So there are no bodies in the world. Absolutely no bodies. Now people say, wait a minute, Michael, of course there are bodies. I can touch it. Well, just because you can touch something doesn't mean it's real. Let's use an example. Let's imagine that we make your left hand out of radio waves and you go to clap your hands together. You say, Michael, we must have a body because when I clap my hands together, they make a noise, they interact with each other, and they don't go through each other. So obviously they're real. Well, they're real something, but if you don't know the truth about what the reality is, you can be fooled. So as an example, let's imagine that we made your left hand out of radio waves. And then you clapped your hands together. What would happen? The hand that's made of radio waves would pass right through the other hand. Why? Because it's in a different frequency range. If we made both of your hands out of radio waves again, guess what would happen? You'd go to clap them together and they'd appear solid to each other. Because when the atomic magnetic structure of each is the same, there is an interaction, a resonant interaction between them, and they appear solid. But there's nothing solid about your right hand. If your left hand's made of radio waves, your right hand it goes right through your right hand. Obviously, there's nothing solid there. So understanding the truth about it, there isn't such a thing as a body. And notice in your list of codependents, the people who offended you got names of a list of bodies. Where does that body come from? I'd offer it comes from your own mind. And if you're in pain, remember the criteria was everyone who's offended me, i.e., resonates some kind of pain in me. If you're in pain, listening to Max Planck's quote, what have you nested? Remember he said, the patterns of vibratory fields nested one within another within another. If you're in pain when that person is around resonating something in you, what have you nested in your field to cause that pain? So my offering is that the shiny silver disc is just a little vignette, a little movie perceptual construct played out by the mind. What is a body? The body is nothing but a vignette, an image in a mind. And whatever is resonating within that mind will create an image and if you don't know any better, you'll substitute those images for the actual people in your life. And when you do that, you will tend to destroy your relationships. I remember working with a woman, this goes back way years ago in Fort Lauderdale. I used to have a practice down there back 3.5 decades ago. And I was doing some private work with a woman, and she'd been doing this work for some time. I don't remember now how long. It's a long time ago since this happened, but she came into a session. She's like, "Oh my God, I caught myself. I just about really trashed my husband." Oh, what happened? So, well, we were in bed and we're being intimate, and I found myself fantasizing about someone I was attracted to. And she realized that she was cheating. And she instantly suppressed that, just shut that down. And she was aware enough. Remember when we started to work with the power person worksheet, the objective is to become the thinker apart from the thought, the actor apart from the actions, the feeler apart from the feelings. Well, in that case, she caught herself. If she had not been doing this work, if she was not aware, she would have believed what her mind told her, because the instant she caught herself fantasizing about being in bed with another man, she went into guilt, self-blame, and shut that down. And seconds later, she caught herself imagining that her husband was cheating on her. The very brain cells she'd hidden from herself, she turned into a picture and she caught herself. That's the objective here. is catch your mind in the vignettes that it makes up. And are you substituting those vignettes for what actually happened in the actuality? Remember that carbon-based memory. We've talked about, if you take your physiology into a lab and say, tell me what these chemicals are that make up my body, they'll tell you that the base element is carbon. And a carbon atom, a natural carbon atom, is 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons. 666. You might remember that number. So carbon-based memory's job is to play out these vignettes on cue. And the vignettes are played out by the goals that you hold for whoever you're interacting with. And, thank God for the genius of this man, Yeshua, 2,000 years ago, who understood that these vignettes that carbon-based memory replays and replays. Notice there's actually a book about this. You might want to take a look at it. It's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? You can download it free from our website if you haven't read it. It's out of print, so I can't sell you one, but you can download it free. Go to whyagain.org, whyagain.org/book. Download the book in any one of, I think it's 9 or 11 languages now. And the why is this happening to me again happens because there is this unresolved content within the mind that never belonged there. And when we load a goal that resonates that content, then our mind takes those thoughts and creates a vignette, creates a little movie, creates a little picture out of it. And that this genius 2,000 years ago knew that whole process was driven by goals. And the core of the forgiveness process is to collapse those vignettes that are based in falsity. And the way you tell if there's a vignette running in your mind that's based in falsity is there's some form of hostility or fear. But if you keep talking like it's not yours, then you won't really know that it's yours. So when you persistently, consistently collapse the false vignettes, then the same mind that those vignettes are played out on become a screen for the creator to write the true guidance for your life. And so just take that in for a minute and breathe with that. If you collapse every vignette in you based in hostility or fear, now you'll notice that most people aren't interested in collapsing those vignettes. They're interested in talking about whose fault it is, and they're at the fault of whoever's on the list. But you notice the first person that you put on the list from when you were 5 years old and the behavior that they did, notice that behavior shows up with another person's name on it when you were 15, and another person's name when you were 20, and another person's name when you were 25, and another person's name when you turned 70, and every 5 years in between. Why? Because it's content in your own mind, and when a goal resonates that content, then those vignettes play out.
Jerry wants to know the difference between expectations and goals.
Okay, we got a question. And the question is, what's the difference between an expectation and a goal? Well, let's say I watched the news today, or pardon me, the weather report, and the weather said it's going to be partly cloudy but clear. And so I dress appropriately. It's going to be 70 degrees. And I go out and it's spitting rain. Now, I might be a little disturbed, but I had an expectation that it was going to be the way the weatherman said. And so it's not likely that there's going to be any big disturbance over the fact that my expectation was not met. A goal is an intention. So an expectation is not necessarily linked to an intention. The weatherman said, I didn't have an intention with that. But the weatherman said, and it didn't work, and like, so what? But intentions are the raw material of goals. And the reason why intentions are so important is like, if you don't know the truth of how your own mind works, it makes life really difficult. But when you realize that intentions are the raw material of goals, and then you realize this genius mind 2,000 years ago, they asked him a question. They said, "What's most important in the law?" Now, the Greeks have made that idea, have made all kinds of vignettes about how the law is the rule of a superior, and the superior is really peeved with you because you didn't follow the law, and you're going to get punished for it. I mean, there's a whole life length movie made up about that one that most people carry around inside of them, and it's all a fraud and it's all a lie. In Aramaic, the word law simply means the way things work. It's not the rule of a superior. Kings want you to believe law is the rule of a superior. I said it, you have to follow it, or else. No such king in the sky. That's of Greek fantasy. But law simply means how things work. So they asked Yeshua, how do things work? How do you get to really be a human being? And he says, first law. This covers the whole game. And you'll notice the Greek said you got to love your neighbor. Total fraud, total fantasy, totally off base. Never said such a thing. What he said in Aramaic is you must have rachma for the creator and for your neighbor. Now, rachma has to do with love, so they misinterpret it as something about, loving your neighbor. But actually, the word rachma is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain. It's interesting. There are several Aramaic speaking communities still in the world today. One of them is out in the Irvine, California area. Back, oh geez, I don't even know, 20 years ago, I was traveling with the Kabur's manuscript, the oldest known copy of the New Testament. It's original Aramaic. I was traveling to different universities to find out what we could do in order to get really super high resolution images made of the manuscript. And we went to visit this community in Irvine, California, or Southern California. May not actually exactly been Irvine, but it was in that area. And we had been searching for an understanding because the experts couldn't come up with a definition for rachma. And this community was a native Aramaic speaking community. And what they said was that the definition that had been lost. They didn't know in antiquity what that word meant, except that their tradition was that it was like the most precious jewel you could own. So imagine, you've got this big ring with this huge diamond in it. That would be the metaphor for rock, the most precious jewel you could own. And, if you think of somebody holding a ring out on their hand, the place where rachma hangs out is right in the frontal lobes of the brain. It is a filter and a gateway in the mind. It's a filter over intentions that blocks, and there are three filters over intentions in the frontal lobes of the brain. One of them is hostility, one of them is fear, and one of them is rachma. Only one of those can be active at a time. So the most precious jewel you could have if you want to live a human life, the key way to it is you maintain rachma when you think of the creator, when you think of neighbor. That's its first function as a filter. Its second function is as a gateway through which human life, the created human essence that we are, soul, nafsha in Aramaic, enters the human form. So someone in whom hostility or fear is active, there is no human life. People say, how could a human being do that? Well, a human being couldn't do some of the things we've seen, what appear to be humans do. But it isn't a human being doing it. It's a body that is what we call a human form, but the form there with no human life is not human. If rachma is not active, the created essence called love, the source of volition, choice, and the creative process in an individual's life, isn't in that form if rachma is not active. That's the most precious jewel you could have. It's the key way into your human life. And the reason it's so important in terms of intentions is because intentions are the raw material of goals. And so I have this whole range of intentions. My partner, Dan McDougall, this was a man who actually originally found and bought the Course manuscript from a monastery on the Kybur River in Turkey. And thank you, Dan, for still guiding this work. I'm looking at his picture as we speak. One of Dan's favorite sayings about intentions, because there were people writing books about the power of intentions. One of his favorite sayings, he sourced this one. I like to use it too. An intention can no more move a muscle than a shadow can carry a stone. People writing books about the power of intention are looking at shadows and don't know what they're talking about. However, if Rahman is active, then all of your intentions will be keyed to love. And the reason that's important is because out of the field of intentions that you have, you're going to make a commitment to one of them. You're going to make a commitment to its accomplishment, that intention. And that's what turns it into a goal. Totally different from an expectation. So I source an intention based in love. Rahman is open. And now out of, gee, I look at this, what am I going to do with the weekend? Well, I'm either going to go over to the Creeper Trail and I'm going to ride down the Creeper Trail, or we're going to drive up, the last week in May and we're going to see the Trilliums up in the Northeast. There's an awesome trip up there we did a couple of years back. Just fabulous. They're like acres and acres and acres of these Trilliums that are just amazing. Or maybe we're going to do this, or maybe we're going to stay home, play with the kids. They're all intentions. Once we talk about it, Ginny, I've talked about it, and we say, uh, the parents or the kids, are busy, and they've asked if we can take them for the weekend. Let's do that. Now we've made a commitment, and now our intention is a goal. So that would be the difference between expectations, intentions, and goals. And goals, the reason why they're important is because goals drive behavior. Goals drive perception, which produces behavior. And there are corollary 3 filters over the back of the brain where perception is stored. One of those correlates to the hostility filter over intentions. The other one, the fear filter over intentions. Over perception, there's hostility and fear. And then there is a corresponding word to Rakba that in Aramaic is called Kuba. Together, Rakma and Kuba were what were called perfect love. And you remember they said perfect love casts out fear. If those 2 filters are set, the mind cannot use a fear-based energy. A fear-based energy is gated out of physiology, and only love can be present in physiology. So the filters over perception, which one is active, is dependent on which filter is active over intentions. Rahma and Kuba are interactive, interrelated filters. You know that old song, you can't have one without the other? Well, if Rahma is active, then Kuba is going to be active. If Kuba is active, then Rahma is. If one of them gets knocked out, let's imagine that here I am in this state of perfect love, and somebody comes along and resonates an old codependence issue that I haven't dealt with. And that, let's say it involves the really strong emotion of, say, rage, and that rage comes up. Well, that's going to tend to knock Kuba out. The hostility filter is going to be activated. And now I'm going to perceive through that filter. And when that filter is active, the only energy my mind can use to build my perception about my object of attention whatever my goal is focused on, is something that's irritated about that object of attention. If the fear filter is the active one, then I'm going to see something threatening about that object of attention. If Rachma and Kuba are active, Kuba over intentions, then the only brain cells my mind can use to produce my perceptual construct about that object of attention are those keyed to love. And so Rachma and Kuba together, perfect love. Hostility or fear active knocks out perfect love. If we collapse the vignettes, the little movies, remember the guy standing on the tarmac, got a little movie of the shiny silver disc spinning. When you collapse those by forgiving, then the mind becomes available for different purposes. And we start to move out of codependent relationship as hostility and fear are dissolved through forgiveness. Until then, because approximately by my estimate in observing in the world, is that by about the age of 4, virtually everyone is a very dedicated, devout, card-carrying member of the one world universal religion of blame and victimhood. And so a codependent relationship, of course, is an outgrowth of that. So a codependent relationship is, and you can have a codependent relationship with your car. You can have a codependent relationship with, an object in your house. How many people have ever sat and watched somebody screaming and raging at the TV? They're in a codependent relationship with what's on the TV. So a codependent relationship is anyone or anything where a vignette, a body, a thing shows up in your mind causing you pain. And anyone that you blame, you say, you made me mad, you made me sad. I am now a member of the one world universal religion of blame and victimhood, and it's all your fault. Once I blame someone for the output of my mind, then I'm in a codependent relationship. And I'm codependent with this person, needing them to be the screen on which I project this painful vignette so that I don't have to own it. And the first step in moving out of that is start to realize that that's not the purpose of your mind or body. Pain is a signal that there is a disintegrative energy in your tissue structure. If you ascribe the power of causing you pain to someone else by pretending they have the ability to cause anything in you, whether it's pain, anger, sadness, pleasure, it can happen on the positive side of the spectrum too. By putting it into your brain's image of them, the vignette your mind plays out, then you can deny that it's yours and keep it hidden. And if you give them, via blame, all of your power, they show up in your mind as having all the power, and you feel powerless. And you did that to yourself by stepping into this errant religion of blame. Again, everyone was given the same amount of power at their creation. Those who've given it away, they control me, they're running me, look what they did to me. Then each time I do that, I'm giving away my power and reinforcing this whole idea of codependent relationship. This is all in your mind. And, for each person who's done that, it's time to take our power back. And one of the things to be aware of is that the vignettes, the perceptions that your mind generates, take their direction from purpose. And so let's say you live in a world where, no, I'm powerless in this arena and I need somebody to blame. Then I will create vignettes of somebody that's got the power while I'm weak and helpless, and I'll walk away from that conflict or that situation talking about them and how they're the problem in my life. And if I want to actually step into a real human life, if I have that kind of a conflict going on, I want to start to train myself to walk away from that situation, talking to me about me and my mental illness. Blame is a mental illness. It debilitates the proper function of the human mind. The true function of the human mind is to embody human life, to embody the created essence of love that you are. So the first step to interdependence is to make real the purpose of your form. And the purpose of your form is to make physiology a place where love incarnates, expresses, and fuels the system. So once you realize that and you make real the purpose of your form, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Now, if you come from a thousand generation of blamers, which most everybody in this country, in this world does, I mean, just sit and turn on the TV. And how often, when was the last time you watched a TV show or you heard a newscast and the newscast was, whoa, we had a conflict between the president of ABC country and XYZ country, and each of the presidents said, you know what? I found that I've been blaming you and thinking about making war on you, and I realized that we have a problem, that I have a problem in my country that I need to take responsibility for and get us, our people, to clean up. And the other president also said, this is a news report. The other president said, you know something? You're right. I'm realizing that's a problem in our country too. And we need to train our people to step up and take responsibility and change that. When was the last time you heard a news report like that? When was the last time you watched a television show where two people were in interaction with each other? And each of them, let's imagine you're watching the movie The War of the Roses, and each person stops and says, I realize I've been through this rage that I'm pointing at you and projecting on you 87 different times with 42 different people. And I think it might be time for me to stop that. I think it might be time for me to actually become an adult and stop this childish thing of, nah, 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 look what you did to me. I think it's time for me to wake up. When was the last time you saw a television show that portrayed that? Rare. Watch It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Watch Mr. Rogers. Watch how he shifts the man who's interviewing him. True story. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It's not the movie's actually not about Mr. Rogers. It's about the guy who worked for Esquire magazine. True story. And he was asked to write a 400-word article about Mr. Rogers, and he didn't want to do it. And his boss said, you're going to do it or you're going to get fired. And he said, well, why am I interviewing this guy? He said, because you've got such a bad reputation of being an SOB that he's the only one that would interview with you. He's the only one that would accept an interview with you. And so in that film, you see Mr. Rogers as he starts to resonate this writer's own unresolved issues. The writer actually exhibits one of the primo steps of codependence. He invites this writer to look at something responsibly in his life. And the writer, I mean, Mr. Rogers made the time to do an interview with this guy, and the writer gets up and leaves the room. One of the basic messages of the codependent is shut you down. Don't make me look. And if you make me look, then you're the problem in my life. It's all your fault that I'm feeling. Excuse me. The reason you're feeling this is because it's inside of you. Stop the lies. You're looking at a shiny silver disc in your mind and you're thinking that it's actually out there. And if you try to touch that, it will destroy you. The truth is, your created essence is that of conscious, active, present love. The objective, the purpose of a human form is to embody, to incarnate that state of being. Everything else is a lie. And tomorrow, we'll step into the next step and give you the turnaround on that worksheet. Maybe what you want to do between now and tomorrow's show is do some work on that list of, everybody who's ever offended you, the nature of their offense, your punishment thought, and your advice to them. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed one. Lots of love and blessings.